So, all right, so let's talk about the Pythagorean Theorem, section 10.4. So I'm going to start with a word problem 8, and then we're going to elaborate on that, right? So suppose that you guys are playing volleyball, right? A volleyball court is 30 feet wide and 60 feet long. That's the right measurement, is that right? That's what they claim, right?
I don't know.
Now, a player, suppose Nora want to serve, right? What's going on over there? What's going on down there? What's going on between you two? All right. So a volleyball court is 30 feet wide and 60 feet long. A player, Nora, you say, is want to serve the ball from one corner of the court to the opposite corner because she feels like there's a weak player that I can't catch her serve, right? So if you serve it, right, how far is this? How did you figure it out?
Like 60 feet long.
You don't know that. We know that the court, right? We can draw the court. We can draw it.
Serve from one corner to the other. You just stand at the corner you want to serve and serve straight. It's not that hard.
You can serve to the other corner.
So let's say this is Nora here, right?
You don't aim to do.
Nora's here, right? This is Nora, and she has the volleyball. She want to serve.
Do that though.
60 feet and 30
What's
feet,
going on with your hair?
right?
No, I think
Let's say she woke up that morning and she didn't feel like doing her hair. Right? Let's give her a right?
Please stop. You're making it worse.
So now she wants to serve, right? She hits the ball from here, and she want to serve. She want to serve from this corner, right?
Okay.
To this corner. Right? This is the volleyball net here,
Size
right?
like Goliath. That's 60 feet.
She wants to serve from here to here, right?
Okay.
Now, how do we know what the distance is? We can use
Do an estimation.
that. We don't want to know the exact distance, so we have to use the Pythagorean theorem, right?
I'm in a game.
If you look at this, wait a minute. If you look at this, this is a right angle, so it forms a right triangle. So therefore, the application is we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to get to that, right? So now, before we do that, I want to explain this real quick. So, in any given right triangle, right, the sum of the squares of the length of the leg is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. And I'll draw that. And the formula is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squares, right? So this is a right triangle that I drew, right? And then these sides are called the legs. They're called the legs, all right? These are called the legs, and this is called the hypotenuse. In any given triangle, the sides where you have the right angles, this is always going to be the leg. You can call it B, and this is A. And then the hypotenuse, always we use the letter C for the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the side opposite the right angle. Everyone repeat that. The hypotenuse is the side opposite the right angle, right? So this is always going to be the hypotenuse, and all the other sides are called the lengths. You can call this A or B, doesn't matter. But the hypotenuse is always going to be the side that is opposite the right angle, right? So Pythagoras came up with this formula, and I just read you the story of how he came up with the formula. He saw a blacksmith, and he heard the sound, and he went ahead and put the squares in a triangle, and he realized that. So and that became like something that will now be used, right? So according to Pythagoras, and according to what he found, if you square the legs of any of these triangles, you add them up, it's always going to be equal to the square of the hypotenuse, which means a squared plus b squared is always going to be equal to what? C squared. That's what he found out. And I'm going to prove it to you, right? Let's assume that we have a triangle with measurement 8, right? And then we also have this equal to 15, right? So if you want to find the hypotenuse, all you have to do is just do what? 8 squared plus what? 15 squared, right? So if you do 8 squared plus 15 squared, you're going to get that this is 64, right? 8 squared 64 plus 1. 15 squared is 225, okay? 225. And that gives you 289. And 289 is equal to what? C squared, right? C squared. C squared. Not just C squared. Now the question is, are we looking for C squared or are we looking for C?
C.
So how do you find C?
Square root.
We take the square root, right? We take the square root of that. What's the square root of 289? Who knows it? Without thinking. 17. Right?
Okay.
Is he going to be plus or minus 17 or just 17?
Plus or minus.
Are you sure it's plus or minus?
Just regular triangle.
We can't have a negative
Look up.
length, right? So it's just going to be what?
Regular.
17, right? So C is equal to 17. So if you do this, 8 squared plus 15 squared, you're always going to get the same thing, 220 and 289, right? So in any given right triangle, the square of both legs added together is always going to give you the square of the hypotenuse. This formula is going to follow you in physics. It's going to follow you in algebra 2. It's going to follow you in algebra 1, pre-calculus. There's a lot of problems that we deal with that have right triangles, right? And even in calculus 2, we did a lot of things with
Okay, you can
a word problem. So we're gonna do all of that, all right? So now, let's go back to our problem and let's try to solve this, right? Now let's try to solve this. I want to know how far Nora was able to hit that ball, right?
That's Nora.
All right, whatever. The stick figure Nora, let's call it.
No.
We call it Mora then. That's fine. You guys just say Mora. We just call her Mora, right? Let's call her Mora. So Mora just hit the ball, right? So how do we find, what is this side going to be called? What am I going to call this side? The hypotenuse. And how much is this here? How much is this? 60. So how am I going to find that? I'm going to do what?
30 squared
Square.
plus 60 squared
Equals to
equals to
C squared, right? And then 30 squared is what? 900.
okay.
And 60 squared is 3,600. So if you add them together, you get 4,500, right? Equals to C squared. Now how do I find C?
You square root of 4,500.
What's the square root of 4,500?
Oh, you know what's the square root of 4,500? 67.082039.
So we can write it off to 67.1, right? Is equal to C. So she hit the ball 67.1 feet. Right? If you ever find a hypotenuse that's less than, so if you ever find a hypotenuse that is less than the legs, you know you did something wrong because the hypotenuse is always going to be the longest side. That's just truth, right? Now let's do this problem here. That's a little different, right? Now a balloon advertising the opening of a store is, how do you say this word? Is it tether or tether? Tether. Thank you for your vocabulary lesson. Right? See, women are good at, whatever. I'm not going to get involved with you guys this morning.
They're good at spelling.
She just taught me how to spell. So we appreciate you ladies, right? A balloon advertising the opening of a store is tethered to the ground as shown. I'm going to draw a picture, right? So, see, now you have to come up with a picture. This is why this is important, right? So I'm not saying you have to be an artist, but you do have to come up with a picture. So let's try to figure this out, right? So let's try to figure this out. So this is the balloon, right? And
ice cream cone.
right, the balloon,
Air balloon?
the balloon is
Okay.
tethered to the ground, right? This is the ground, all right? And they're saying about how many feet above the ground is the balloon,
0.
right? So here's what we're gonna do. What are they looking for? This is the balloon here, right? So this is tethered to the ground. So they want to know how far above the ground is the balloon. They want to know the height, right? That's what they want to find. Okay? They want to find his height. Okay? And now we are given some things in the book. We are told that the distance between the rope, between this is and then where this is here is 25 feet. We are told that this is 25 feet, right? And this is 45 feet. So now what am I looking for? I'm looking for here the height, right?
So
How far is it above the ground? We don't know that.
45 squared plus h squared equals 40.
No. What's the hypotenuse?
What do you think of it? What do we 30? 45?
So which one do we know now? We know the hypotenuse and one of the legs, right? So we know that a squared, we always going to start with this formula, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, right? Now let's replace what we know. What do we know?
A
We know A and C, or B and C, doesn't matter, right? So we're gonna know, let's say we know A and C, so we're gonna replace A by what? 25 squared plus B squared equals to what? 45 squared.
That's what I said.
That's what you say?
And then you said no.
Okay, my apologies there.
Oh.
I don't think I heard that. No, okay. Right? So that was 25 squared. 625. My mind works like
Why are
that.
you smiling? That's not a good sign.
It's 629.
Right?
You're probably like thinking
And
about
what's
all
45
day.
squared?
You could say that.
Somebody help me. 45 squared.
No.
Somebody help me.
Please.
Please.
From the goodness of our heart.
But this business of your heart, 45 squared.
No. It's on
What?
the ground.
1,625.
It's on the ground.
Exactly.
Is that right?
45 times 45?
Yeah.
No, so you have 25.
How much?
It's 2025.
2025? All right.
Hey, that's this year.
And I have my solve for B squared. What am I doing here?
Algebra.
What am I going to do?
I know.
What does that even say?
That balloon is
I don't
not in the sky.
So, right? So B squared is equal to what? What's 2025 minus 625?
One. 1,002.
1,000 what?
400.
All right. And how do I find B?
You have to find the square root.
You divide.
So B is equal to?
415,000.
415. So we can write it off in 4, 2, right? So basically we're going to conclude that the balloon is what? 37 feet and 42. 42 feet above the ground. All right?
It's
I thought it was on the ground.
So this is
the
how.
answer is 0.
So this is how.
The ground. They're talking about the top of the balloon.
This is
Oh,
how.
what do you mean?
Right?
How high
This
the
is how.
balloon is? Like how tall
Hey,
it is?
hey, hey. Right? This is how you figure it out. Okay?
Okay.
This is how you do this. So the Pythagorean Theorem is really, really easy to use, and it's really fun when you understand now. The problem with the Pythagorean Theorem is you have to figure out to draw those pictures. Sometimes it's not as obvious. You have to be able to like picture out what are you being given. Because if the book does not give you any picture, now you have to come up with what they're saying and interpret that. And then you can apply the Pythagorean Theorem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you some work to do.
No.
Okay?
Don't do that.
And then also, all right, so there's something else that you also need to know. Basically, how can you tell if you're given some dimensions, right? How would you know if the dimensions that you're given are forming a right triangle? So example, they want you to verify that, right? So basically, let's say I give you three lengths. I give you 3 lengths. Suppose I give you 6, 8, and 10. 6 centimeter, 8 centimeter, and then 10 centimeters. And I want to say, verify that these 3 dimensions here.
Okay, so the 10 will be C.
The 10 is going to be C. We want to verify that this actually, we want to see, we don't know. But does this form a right triangle?
No.
We don't know yet. We have to prove it, right? So let's assume that this is A, this is B, and this is C. So according to Pythagoras, A squared plus B squared is equal to what?
C
C squared. So now let's see if this holds for these values, right? So we're going to go 6 squared plus 8 squared is equal to 10 squared. Now, we're going to put a question mark here. Why am I putting a question mark?
Because you don't know if it's true.
I don't know if it's true. I have to prove it, right? If this is true, then yes, I can conclude that this forms a right triangle. But if it's not, then it's not a triangle, right? Right triangle. So 6 squared is what? 64, right? Is equal to
100.
100. True or false?
Oh.
Look at that.
No,
True, right? So because this is true, my conclusion is yes, we have a
Don't erase
right
that. Don't
triangle, right? We do have a right triangle because
It's gonna erase
this
that.
is true.
Never guess.
Okay? Well, you don't need to guess. You just have to do what? You just have to verify to see that this holds.
What if I bring a tape measure to school and measure out centimeters?
Oh, yeah, you want to do that? That's going to take you a whole day. This is why we just not going to do that. We're just going to apply the Pythagorean Theorem and then figure it out in like a split second. We don't need a measuring tape. We just apply the formula.
With 6
Yep.
it's more than 10 cents.
All right. So now I'm going to give you work to do.